Hello and welcome to Friends International Guildford. We're going to be talking about leadership. We have a life leadership course coming up, which we will discuss a little bit more close to the end of this. But I've got Joash with me, our Reach trainee here in Guildford, and we're going to be talking about leadership and what makes a good leader. Feel free to put in the comments what you think makes a good leader. What does leadership even mean? We're going to be discussing these. We're also going to be looking at someone who talks about leadership a lot, a guy named Simon Sinek. You may have come across him. You may have even seen the video we'll look at in a bit, but he's got a lot of good stuff to say. And then we'll talk a little bit about the Life Leadership course, why we think that you as an international student should go on it, and hopefully you'll enjoy the conversation as we go through. So I'm going to bring Joash onto the screen with me. Hi Joash, how are you doing?
Yeah, hello Phil. Yeah, I'm doing good. Yeah.
Good to see you. So we've been discussing a little bit before we came live what leadership is, and before we even go into the definition of leadership, and maybe if those watching want to comment on their thoughts on what leadership is, feel free to let us know that you're watching. But Joash, let's talk about examples of good leaders first. Who would you, if I was to ask you the question, which I am asking, who do you think of straight away when I say good leader?
That's actually quite a good question. That's actually quite a good question. Actually, I can't think of like a person that I would say is a good leader, but I can think of like, if I'm looking for this person, what sort of character I would seek for. That makes sense. Yeah, I think for me, for leader, sometimes they have to be approachable, easygoing. So, and also pay attention to listen to your team members, maybe what the people working around them will say. I think they're also people sensitive. They kind of relate to what, like, they listen to people, care about people. I think sometimes they also have the courage and the boldness to face the difficulties, the challenges, especially when it's an unknown or new question that requires some sort of new solution.
So do you have any examples, like famous people or anyone that you know of personally that you just, maybe even before you even wrestle with the idea of what a leader is, you just know, I follow them, they are a good person that I want to imitate, follow?
I mean, as a football fans, I'm thinking actually Ronaldo. Like, yes,
Okay.
he's very like outstanding, but I think he's actually quite good leader if you just read a little bit more about what he's doing in the team.
Okay.
Yeah.
So educate me about Ronaldo then.
Right.
He seems, are we talking about the same Ronaldo, not the old one?
Not the old one, the Juventus one.
Okay.
So
we got Ronaldo. Why
Yeah.
would you say he's a good leader? What is he doing with the team?
I think some quick thing is that first he's strong, like he got the strength to play football, like as in a sports setting. He's very but also got a good sportsmanship. He's also not just doing like, no, I'm not playing as the king, just pass the ball to me every time, but he's also sharing the workload to others. He's working so hard himself. He's teaching other players how to play. So for me, that is what, and it's very confident. Like, and if he fails, like he missed the shot or his teammate missed the shot, then he move on. He just do it again and again. So yeah.
Okay, so he's got some resilience in there and good example of how to play, and just kind of keep going on.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got Ronaldo, a sports person, as a leader, which is interesting. Okay, so there's some good stuff in there. Anyone else? Any other examples that come to mind? Maybe not sport. I mean, maybe sport, if that's where all your leaders are that you.
I think actually, well, I do have another sports one. I'm sorry,
Okay. Go on.
Chris Froome of Team Ineos, which is cycling team. So
Okay,
he actually won like several, like Tour de France, and then Giro d'Italia, and then I can't remember the last one in Spain. Sorry,
I didn't realize you're into cycling.
Yeah, but he's like the champion. He's the top man of the team. So
Yep.
you'd be expected to keep it that way. But no, I mean, I think I remember after he won like several tournaments that at this one tour, he's actually supporting another key players and just be a supporters. And he's leading by a role model and working so hard. So that as well, I think.
Okay. So
And I'm thinking so
there's a
hard
lot.
for a non-sportsman, but I'm sorry, yeah.
No, it's all good. No, I'm happy with
Mm.
Chris Froome. So there's a lot about role modeling in there and influencing people, which is quite interesting. So the two people that you've gone to, that they help teach others as well. So it's interesting who you go to for your leadership examples. I mean, I'm thinking like Martin Luther King Jr. and Nelson Mandela. Maybe there's a civil rights type movement in there. We've got some good people that we follow kind of naturally, and we look to who they are. But it's interesting you bring up some character issues in there as well, potentially, and that's quite interesting that you bring that up, which we might talk about. So we've got a few qualities that you've pulled out, and I would agree with. I think a lot of our examples of good leaders would need character, would need to be influential, will need to have some sort of I don't know, some qualities that we want to follow and are good examples. But how do we define leadership, or how do you define leadership? I'll be interested in what you've looked up, because I gave you the question before, but also do you agree with these definitions that you've found? Let's discuss this a bit.
Yeah, I think I've actually, because in the past I've also been involved in ACADES back in Hong Kong and different various roles in fellowships and other organizations that I've get in touch with all sorts of different definition of leadership. I mean, for me, I would define leadership as, well, first of all, because everyone is a leader. And leadership is kind of the skill set or the characteristic of a person working towards a team or leading themselves. So in one sense, leadership, I would sometimes describe it as a style. So maybe it's how you do things, maybe it's your thinking process, maybe your philosophy, maybe your preferences, maybe the perspective on how you see a task, or your specialist skills. So for me, I would describe leadership style of a person, of myself. And it doesn't really matter what roles or position or how much authority you have, let's say in a team or in a company. It doesn't matter with the position, which, yeah, I would say is a set of skills to influence others, to communicate with others, to work towards in a project or a goal. Yeah.
That sounds about where I'd agree with it. I think it's really important that it's not just about position and title, though. If you type define leadership into Google, that's one of the definitions it will definitely come up with, is the position or title or authority. I think that's a good use of the word there, authority. That generally comes to mind if I think, if you think of leader, at least in a business environment, in a work environment, you're thinking top management. And so that's kind of interesting. You've noted that already, and you have been on a couple life leadership webinars fairly recently. Before you went on those webinars, would you say that they changed your definition or understanding of leadership in any way?
I think they sort of they just gave me a bit more reminders or insight on some other aspect of leadership skills, or the character that a good leader nowadays in a modern world should have. Shall I share one or two?
Yeah, go for it. Yep.
I think one thing is about cultural intelligence, or CQ, some will suggest. It's because now we are working in a world that is so diverse, with workers from all over the world, or all sorts of different cultures, different value systems. So in nowadays, to be a good leader is kind of necessary, that this presenter says necessary, that you have that cultural awareness, so that when you're working with each other in a project, in a team, that you don't just assume certain things or certain thoughts. So, but really try have that awareness of that there may be some underlying problems, not necessarily a problem, but just different ways of thoughts, that there will be some clashes, but how to try to avoid them and to put everyone to work together in the same team, on the same boat. Yeah.
That's a really good one. Loads of good stuff in. I was in that seminar as well, and I thought just really good examples of how we think differently when we've grown up in different environments, and even with what leadership looks like. The conversations on Life Leadership course when we have different cultures in the room is really interesting, even down to the sense of how we feel the value of time and how our feedback is structured. So how much positive praise do we put around a negative? All these things can be different depending on the sort of cultural background that we have. So that's a really good example of how sensitive to the people around you are, and that can really make a leader rise or fall depending on how you are able to do that. You mentioned earlier that you said anyone can be a leader. Is that true? Do you think that's true?
I think how I put the model is that because, well, the word leader is of you are leading something, you're pulling something that can including yourself. So you are essentially the leader of yourself, because let's say for a student that you may have lots of assignments due. Nowadays you got the like online teachings, maybe it's fixed time, maybe you have to arrange your own time. You got group projects, maybe you got some a lot of communication coordinator. Actually quite a lot of work. And if you are just sitting there not doing any of this, not doing any planning, like what I've done wrong in the past, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not leading myself to anywhere. So I think to me, everyone is the leader of themselves to start with, and that is the fundamental, the first step, the base, that everyone is a leader of themselves. So
no, I do agree with that, and so in that sense, yes, we all are leaders, and I think I do agree, and that is very much the heart of this course. So if you're watching this either live or later, and you feel like I'm not a leader, well, this course could well help you out. It could be a course that I want to recommend to you, and I'll explain it a little bit more as we go. But hopefully, you're getting an idea that leadership isn't just necessarily about your title, your position, and a lot of people have written on this, and there's loads of probably TED Talks as well as other talks about leadership, which we look at throughout the course to help, as Joash has said, that this is something about leading yourself well, because there is something about someone. So when we look at people who are good leaders, there is something about them that they are leading themselves well, and you're drawn to them. There's something that you're drawn to, and we look into what that is. So we've talked a bit about position, leadership, title. I want to dig into that a little bit more, but to do that, we're going to listen to a guy named Simon Sinek, who is pretty much a leadership coach, and you might recognize him. So we're just going to play him now, and then we'll come back in and talk to you about what he says.
There are two things that I think that great leaders need to have: empathy and perspective. And I think these things are very often forgotten. Leaders are so often so concerned about their status or their position in an organization, they actually forget their real job. And the real job of a leader is not about being in charge, it's about taking care of those in our charge. And I don't think people realize this, and I don't think people train for this. When we're junior, our only responsibility is to be good at our jobs. That's all we really have to do. And some people actually go get advanced educations so that they can be really good at their jobs, accountants or whatever, right? And you show up and you work hard, and the company will give us tons and tons of training how to do our jobs. They'll show us how to use the software. They'll send us away for a few days to get trained in whatever it is that we're doing for the company. And then they expect us to go be good at our jobs. And that's what we do. We work very hard. And if you're good at your job, they'll promote you. And at some point, you'll get promoted to a position where we're now responsible for the people who do the job we used to do, but nobody shows us how to do that. And that's why we get managers and not leaders. Because the reason our managers are micromanaging us is because they actually do know how to do the job better than us. That's what got them promoted. Really what we have to do is go through a transition. Some people make it quickly, some people make it slowly, and unfortunately, some people will never make that transition at all. which is we have to go through this transition of being responsible for the job and then turning into somebody who's now responsible for the people who are responsible for the job. And as I said before, one of the great things that is lacking in most of our companies is that they are not teaching us how to lead. And leadership is a skill like any other. It is a practicable, learnable skill. And it is something that you work on. It's like a muscle. If you practice it all the days, you will get good at it and you will become a strong leader. If you stop practicing, you will become a weak leader. Like parenting, everyone has the capacity to be a parent. Doesn't mean everybody wants to be a parent, and doesn't mean everybody should be a parent. Leadership is the same. We all have the capacity to be a leader. Doesn't mean everybody should be a leader, and it doesn't mean everybody wants to be a leader. And the reason is because it comes at great personal sacrifice. Remember, you're not in charge, you're responsible for those in your charge. That means things like when everything goes right, you have to give away all the credit. And when everything goes wrong, you have to take all the responsibility. That sucks, right? It's things like staying late to show somebody what to do. It's things like when something does actually break, when something goes wrong, instead of yelling and screaming and taking over, you say, try again. When the overwhelming pressures are not on them, the overwhelming pressures are on us. At the end of the day, great leaders are not responsible for the job. They're responsible for the people who are responsible for the job. They're not even responsible for the results. I love talking to CEOs and say, what's your priority? And they put their hands on their hips all proud and they say, my priority is my customer. I'm like, really? You haven't talked to a customer in 15 years. There's no CEO on the planet responsible for the customer. They're just not. They're responsible for the people who are responsible for the people who are responsible for the customer.
What did you make of that?
I think very inspiring, yeah, and they're quite true. Like being leader is not just taking care of job. Like it's quite a common mistake, even sometimes for myself. But really, one of the most important things is to take care of those who take care of the job. So that is a very good reminder. Yes. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I quite like that as well, and I think that's something that I think many people, when they think of leadership, they think of the person that's in charge of everyone, that does the bossing people around. And so it's really important to see how influence makes a leader, and even character, good character makes a good leader. Because when we think of those who we might work with, who we know as student leaders, maybe we know the ones who we don't want to follow or we don't want to work with, and generally that's because their character or how they listen or how they talk about other people on their team, they're things that we don't want to align ourselves with necessarily. So that's kind of I'm sure you can think of, has any of this brought to light anyone else that you can think of, just going back to that very first question, people that you know who aren't necessarily in positions or maybe around you? You don't have to give names, but can you think of people that are good leaders around you now that aren't necessarily those people high flying in different roles like Ronaldo or Chris Froome? I've stumped you.
No, I think yes, I think so. What I think this particular lady, she's volunteering at one of the organization I'm with. So she's not official staff apparently. She's not like trainee or like given an authority. But every time when we're doing things together, that she is very kind and she is very like putting her heart but at that time I'm the one who actually being taught and trained at the student basically is where her heart is, and she's not there to, oh, I'm gonna tell you this, I'm gonna teach you this, just accept it, but really to respect me, to ask me, oh, do you know what it is about then? So really to take care of those who are responsible for lives. Like I'm responsible for my own study, so she's not doing my study, but she's teaching me and trying to help me so that I can do my own studies. So yeah, this lady really, yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, and once you start thinking of character and who you follow, I think actually the examples that you have hopefully become a little bit more clear, and you don't have to look as far as, well, for me, the two dead people that I thought of, Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther King, are great, but I can follow in their footsteps to some extent. But it's great having people around you who can teach you that now, and so that's the kind of stuff that we will be looking at in life leadership. So just to move towards life leadership, you talked a bit about cultural intelligence, and what other things do you think are skills? Because I thought it was interesting, Simon Sinek there talked about leadership being a skill that you can develop. From the webinars that you've had and some of the things, what skills do you think you've developed or have picked up from those seminars?
And for me, the seminar, there's a lot of reminder to me. So I think, yes, in a sense that even for someone already doing quite a lot of like leadership roles, they still need some constant reminders on the things they're doing. So reminders and refreshing, like there's always a continuous practice so that you remember things well. So for me, the life leadership course helps me just a kind of little reminder to remind me, hey, Joash, you have to remember these things. Yes, no, okay. If the answer is no, you probably have to do a bit more, better than in those songs, which it does. And also for me, life leadership, what I learned is how to look at the same things in a different perspectives. Though I may not totally agree with, or that might not be the definition of leadership. I might not totally agree, but that also helps me to understand. Oh, maybe some others are thinking like this, so I can have the awareness of the different fields. And I guess what Simon's sharing is more focused on like leadership as in a position or taking a role of maybe in a business structure, maybe a manager or CEO. I think that's also another definition which I think is quite common as well. So that definitely that also makes sense. Yeah.
So before we go into life leadership, there is the big question that we were kind of pondering before we went live. Are leaders born or are they made?
And I think depends on what do you consider born. Yeah.
So they don't need any development. they're natural. So let's compare it, because you're a sportsman. So let's say Ronaldo, was he born naturally athletic, or was he made into the Ronaldo you know?
Yeah, I think like sports is kind of a good area, because I guess for some people, no matter what reason, where they are very young, still very young, they're probably like running around or like they're just very athletic. They just doing better than others. That is the case. But also, what important is that they also need to practice. They also need to, like for Ronaldo and maybe Chris Froome, like these two sports like football and cycling is quite team sports. And I think to learn how to use their skills and learn from others and to practice their skills against, like, I don't know, in games, in matches, in practices, it's also important that, okay, they can polish their skill, they can sharpen their knife. So even though I guess, let's say Ronaldo was born very athletic, he still needs to practice his skills, to gain more experience, to learn, I guess, all the tactics or all sorts of stuff. So I think for me, it's a bit of both. But I think, as Simon said, that it is indeed a skills that you can learn. It's just whether you would, or you think you should, or you're willing to learn. But I think it is indeed skills that you can practice and try to be perfect.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. I think there is a bit of both. I think there will be some skills that you are naturally predisposed to. But just to put it out there, because oftentimes we think of leadership as the person that's the loudest, the most charismatic, the person who knows all the answers, is clever, is all these skills that are very much more an extrovert. But it's interesting that introverts apparently will influence over 10,000 people throughout their lifetime. So even the most introverted people still have an influence, and that influence is where skills and character and things that can be developed that comes into play for everyone and anyone. So you're always going to be connected with other people, relating to other people. And if leadership is about influence, then actually everyone has this opportunity to become a better leader. And that's kind of what life leadership is going to be about. And I highly recommend that people do sign up, have a look at the website, and I'm just going to show the promotional video, and then we'll probably close off with maybe another question or go from there. So here we go. I'll add this in. So you can find out more about that on Friends International Guildford's website, friendsinternationalguildford.org.uk/life-leadership. And there's more information. You can see that wonderful promo video put together by our wonderful Joe Burrows on our team. And you can also book in. Now it's on Zoom, so it's a little bit, it's a little bit of false promotion, I'm afraid. We're going to do our best to create that wonderful atmosphere that you saw in the promotion. But unfortunately, yes, it is on Zoom. And just some things to think through, really. Josh, I'm going to probably come to the end of the stream before I really go off on life leadership and what people can expect and really advertise it. With the webinars that you've seen so far, is it something you can recommend? Is it something that you really enjoyed, and maybe one thing that's particularly good about them? I'm going to assume that you did enjoy it, but
I did actually. Yeah, I did enjoy it, and I, even though I'm spending quite a long time in like leadership roles, as probably Simon portrayed, I still learn a lot. Because as Simon said, and I guess many people said, leadership is a transformation, is a continuous process to learn. Like it's life leadership, also life learning. So even though I spend a lot of time in leadership roles, that I still enjoy, and also learning something new actually, and not just learning from the speakers or the lecturer, not lecturer but sharer, but also to learn from other people that join the course, because they may have different style, they may have different thoughts. That also learn from them. So. Yeah, so if you want to know more about like develop your own leadership, so maybe just like a refreshment to yourself, or just to come into this, just listen to them sharings and learn from others. So yeah, I definitely recommend this. Yes, especially the students. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Josh. It's been a pleasure to speak to you. I'm just going to give a little bit more information about life leadership, and then we'll close this stream. So it's been a pleasure talking to Josh. And yes, I did know that he did enjoy it, so I did ask him. We don't pay him to say that, just to put it out there. But it is a great course. I really enjoy being able to run it here in Guildford. We've got very close to 30 people already signed up, which is amazing. Really looking forward to spending some time discussing leadership with people. The way that the evening runs is very much some content which is interactive. You can discuss it in small groups. We'll use breakout rooms. And then on some of the weeks, we'll have a guest speaker from different industries come in and tell us about their story, how they see leadership, and you can ask them questions as well and interact with them. So there's a lot of good stuff, but it's also accredited with ILM. If you Google Institute of Leadership Management, You can see that we're accredited with them, and so it's something you can put in your CV, which would be great, and I highly recommend it. It's another thing that helps you stand out amongst the crowd, and just some things to think through, really. The topics that we cover. So we cover things like what makes an authentic leader. You might be in a role and position. You can probably think of people that aren't really authentic leaders in the sense their character as a leader is different from them as a person. And how do we be authentic where who we are is represented in how we lead? How can we take responsibility for leading ourselves and leading other people? So a little bit of what we saw in Simon Sinek. And then we've got resilient leadership, how to just, especially in pandemic, how do we remain resilient when everything's on Zoom, or how do we remain resilient when everything seems to be changing? So these things are really, really applicable to today, your everyday life, but also applicable to when you go into the working world. If you're already in the working world and around Guildford, do feel free to sign up to this course. And if you've got any questions, get in touch. You can find us through our website, our Instagram, our Facebook feeds, and you can also find me at phil.duncalf@friendsinternational.uk, and that's at the end of the promotional video as well. So do get in touch, do look into it, and highly recommend it. And I hope that on the 17th of February, when this course starts, I hope that I get to meet you and we can talk about leadership and all the things that we covered tonight. So thanks again for watching. Joash, it's been a pleasure, and we'll look forward to hopefully seeing you soon. Take care.